You know, when you think of Gandhi, a certain image probably pops into your head, right? The man with the round glasses, the simple loincloth, the icon of peace. But what if I told you that the story we all know, well, it's just the tip of the iceberg? What if the real Gandhi was far more radical, way more controversial, and at the end of the day, a much more complex figure than the myth we've all come to accept?
I mean, even the people who were putting him on trial knew he was on another level. When a British judge was sentencing him for sedition, he said this, basically admitting he was dealing with someone completely off the charts. This wasn't just another politician. This was something else entirely.
So here's our game plan. We'll start with the familiar image of Gandhi. Then we'll dig deep into his wild core idea, his famous method, where that method failed, the whole controversy around partition, and finally, what to make of his legacy today.
Okay, first up, let's talk about the Gandhi that everybody recognizes, the global symbol of peace and nonviolent resistance.
You've probably heard this quote from Winston Churchill. He dismissively called Gandhi a naked little fakir. And you know, the phrase stuck, because it perfectly captured this unbelievable image, this one seemingly powerless man who with nothing but moral force took on the mightiest empire on the planet. The question is, how did he do it, and what did he really want?
To really get what he was after, you have to look at this little book he wrote way back in 1909 called Hind Swaraj. And I'm telling you, this is where that comfortable, saintly image of Gandhi just completely shatters.
And this is where things get really wild. His primary enemy wasn't the British. It wasn't even about kicking the British out of India, not really. His real target was what he called modern civilization itself, the whole Western way of life, which he saw as materialistic, corrupt, and just fundamentally violent. For him, the British Empire was just a symptom of a much deeper disease.
His view was a total rejection of everything we think of as progress. I mean, look at this. He saw things like railways, lawyers, even modern medicine as things that enslaved humanity. For Gandhi, a true civilization was about morality, self-control, living simply in villages, and working with your hands. He literally called modern Western society a satanic civilization. I mean, wow.
So, okay, if you believe you're fighting a satanic civilization, how do you actually do it? You can't use its own violent methods, right? And this is where Gandhi's genius really comes into play. He created a practical, incredibly disciplined strategy to fight back. He called it Satyagraha. It's often translated as soul force or truth force. Now, the crucial thing to get here is that this is not passive resistance. It's not just sitting around and waiting for things to change. It's an active, confrontational force. It's about using the power of truth and love to actually change the heart of your opponent.
And this wasn't some lofty, philosophical idea he just talked about. He had a rulebook, a practical guide. What you're seeing here are his actual instructions for striking workers. This is Satyagraha in action, a clear set of tactical commands for the real world.
And wow, these rules demand some serious discipline. Of course, no violence, that's number one, but also you can't even harass the people who break the strike. You have to be self-reliant, no begging for money, and maybe most important, your cause has to be just and you have to be completely united. This was a moral war, and to win, you basically had to be flawless.
But, and this is a big but, as powerful as this method was, it had some major limits. And this is where the story of Gandhi takes a turn from being inspirational to being deeply tragic. See, here's the thing. Satyagraha worked against the British because at the end of the day, the British Empire saw itself as civilized. You could shame them. They had a moral framework you could appeal to. But what happens when you're up against an enemy who has no shame, who doesn't play by any moral rules at all? That's a question Gandhi really struggled with. And the timing here is it's brutal. Just 2 weeks after Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass, Gandhi publishes this message for the Jews in Germany. He told them to use Satyagraha against the Nazis. He was convinced it could turn their despair into hope. Looking back with everything we know now, that advice is beyond chilling.
And this wasn't just a theoretical failure, right? It was tried. In Italy, people inspired by Gandhi tried to use these same non-violent methods against Mussolini. And the result? It was a disaster. They were just annihilated. Soul Force had run into a brick wall of pure, absolute evil, and it got crushed. All right, now we have to talk about maybe the most difficult, the most controversial part of Gandhi's entire life, his role in the bloody partition of India in 1947, a tragedy that led to the deaths of as many as 2 million people. And here's the central paradox. All the historical records show that Gandhi was completely against dividing India. He fought it with everything he had. He called it a vivisection of his homeland. So why is he so often blamed for it? The answer is complicated. Okay, so the first big criticism is basically that he didn't do enough. He had used his ultimate weapon before, fasting to the death. Critics ask, if he believed partition was so evil, why didn't he use that weapon to stop it? He famously said partition would happen over his dead body, but he never actually put his body on the line. But his defenders fire back and say, look at what he was willing to do. He offered to make his biggest political enemy, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the Prime Minister of a united India. That is a massive, radical move to try and keep the country together. That's not a guy who's sitting on the sidelines. Then there's this other really tough criticism, his absolute insistence on nonviolence, even as horrific massacres were happening. He reportedly told Hindus that they should bravely face death if attacked, but never, ever fight back. Now imagine hearing that while your family's in danger. You can see why for so many that sounded completely unrealistic and even insulting. But again, his supporters see a man trapped in an impossible situation. They argue a fast would have been totally useless. Jinnah didn't respect Gandhi and probably would have just let him die. And worse, think about it. If Gandhi had died, it could have been the one thing that triggered an even bigger, more catastrophic bloodbath, with Hindus blaming Muslims for his death.
So, where does that leave us? When you try to weigh all these massive contradictions, what you're left with is this incredible paradox of global inspiration and heartbreaking failure. I mean, the impact is just undeniable. His ideas left a permanent impress on the world. Martin Luther King Jr., the American Civil Rights Movement, freedom movements all over the globe, they all drew from his playbook. And yet, the irony of his own end is just staggering. After fighting so hard against partition, he was assassinated by a Hindu extremist who believed Gandhi had betrayed his own people.
And that really brings us to the core question that Gandhi's life leaves us with. Here's a man who came up with an idea so powerful it could bring an empire to its knees, but that same idea seemed to crumble in the face of totalitarian evil and the raw hatred of brother against brother. So the final question is really for all of us. How do you even begin to measure a legacy like that?